Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, o see them yopo.
Muntaka Mohammed oya asawasin of MP Emma NDC no or no after primaries no already all right na after primaries no granting interview TV3 no the same year to before I baba mo tie make sure said fina wutie first time I wutie near a higher PENDREAM TV make sure so be subscribe to channel no one click a bell ne so said anytime bia ya the news beto and also sabe to me aka ntem no atie sanse PENDREAM TV the assembly to ho near the abroad now so nya bi atie no remaining current on issues in this country what you say because Ote wamema de ko ne de benyina se wonsa to make an outie na Muntaka na before ile omo primaries no na obia nim se ono ne Haruna Idris omo na minority leaders ewo parliament na NDC forces omo anya omo de kra na no na Haruna Muntaka Mohammed ka said there are people at the national office NDC national office onim de odai omoba they are trying to interfere him ile primary course omo for so ya senko omoba mana lusu nenso wawe ne eno na watutu bia mani omo nti yenko ne yenko tie de Muntaka Mohammed eka.
It's been a very difficult contest, not because the contest itself was difficult, but because of the so many interference by people who are outside the constituency. That really made it very difficult. And if you remember, on that day, I've been involved in the electoral process for a very long period of time. I mean, I was part of the team that supported our second MP. So I can say from all the way from 1997, I've always been involved in the election in this constituency. But this was shocking for me that, one, if you want to prioritize 47 constituency for NDC in Asante region, everybody knows that Swansea is number one, because that is where we have the largest votes, followed by, what do you call it, Ejura, New Dubiase, and Afram Plains, such Afram Plains. For whatever reason, how could you move the ballot papers for presidential for Swansea and leave the parliamentary? And that culminated into the excessive delay that you saw. I mean, that led to this very delay that we had to, I think the whole of this country, Aswansi was the last to declare. And I think that, you see, you don't throw the baby with the bathwater. We need to be very careful as a party. Because if you allow individuals, whether, I don't want to call it, whether hatred or dislike, to do things that, at the end of the day, almost mar. Because can you imagine if something nasty had happened as Aswansi? It was not only going to end with the primaries, but it was going to affect the NDC fortune itself in Aswansi. So my wish and prayer is that, yeah, we may have our differences. I mean, it is normal. Even in a family, periodically you have your differences. But this kind of open hatred and open interference in Aswansi constituency primaries, I think the party Council of Elders needs to investigate. And I'm told that it's not only in Aswansi. Out of the 100 and over 100 MPs that are contested, I've had complaints from so many MPs what one national officer or the other have done in their constituency. It's when you do that, whether the person wins or not, or loses, it's very difficult for you to carry the person along. Because then the person begins to harbor pain. But thank God, in my case, believe me, I put everything behind me. The most important thing is that to focus on 2024 and make sure that because 2024 is a must win for NDC. Because look, for those of us who have spent all our youthful age in Parliament and for that matter, trying to serve the party, we cannot afford not to win 2024 because we know the repercussion. If you are moving material, and even let's assume you cannot move all of them at a go, you have to prioritize. And I'll ask, in Asante, if you are prioritizing, which constituency will be your priority? Your first priority will be constituencies where we have sitting MPs, because that is your strong area. And in the case of Asante, it's only 4. So if you try to make any explanation to this, I will say that you are so incompetent that you should be moved out of the election directorate because you don't know what you are doing. And then that is one. And then two, you don't move materials separately, presidential separate from parliamentary. For every constituency, you put them together so that when they are moving, you know that both presidential and parliamentary have arrived. How do you move them separately? It shows incompetence. If anybody is going to provide any explanation that it is not deliberate, then it simply means that the person is very incompetent. The person should not be allowed to be in the election directorate. Because if that person continues to be in the election directorate, they will cause us the 2024 election. Aswansi is the biggest constituency NDC has in Asante. It has a sitting MP. I mean, there was this contest that, can you imagine, even the venue for the election was a subject of functional executive discussion. How? How will that happen? You have the constituency, you have the region, and somebody will carry it to the national for functional executive to be discussing Aswansi venue. What a shame. This is very embarrassing for the party. There were a lot of, look, you see, there were officers. So I keep saying that, look, it is painful, but we are struggling to put it behind us. You have a national officer who chose to come in to campaign with my opponent. And nobody in this party said anything. I'm not going to mention it because, like I told you, I want to put it behind me. You have a national officer who was calling business people and telling them not to support me. They should rather support my opponent. How will you do that? Okay, God is not your village chief. Now I've won. I'm not just, with a greater respect, some small ant in a soup that you can scoop. So long as NDC matters. Everybody in this country knows that I'm not an ant that you can just scoop up. Now you've done this. You want the party to move ahead in unity. It has not only been done in my place. It has been done in so many places. People who were not supposed to be qualified, they were qualified and cleared using all manner of nuances. Now some of them have survived, some have lost. How are you going to forge this unity? We have a lot of work to do. My prayer is that all of us, because I believe that for every member of parliament, he knows the consequences of we losing 2024. So that singular threat of our party suffering if we do not win 2024 should be enough reason for all of us to let bygone be bygone.
Muntaka the issues no dia to Jano. Say God is not your village chief. I am passing yame enyo bia kurasi hene. Na Sama Muntaka can say I'm party. I think the NDC National Executive should really sit down and assess the issues it's raised and come to a good resolution towards it. Yes, more kasa no because Obianim Ashanti region there. NDC, one of their strongholds as where Muntaka is the sitting MP over there. And if a person like this holding a fort for you in your baby in your stronghold is Ashanti region, na mo betna ho amo be the personal grudge or with him, I interfere elections just to make sure he lose there, then it's up to Omo Ankasa. Do you get it? If what Muntaka is saying is true or is anything to go by there, then it's very serious and it needs not to be encouraged. If heard the way a man is he is really pained about what happened. What I say, and he is really pained about it. But then, because of the love he has for his party, said they were kind of so they are to the because elections are presidential and parliamentary. In what explanation I'll be met me say presidential ballot state me could do na parliamentary them could do like how they all move together as he said. So what happened in this case to the extent of the venue that the election will be held was discussed at the national office? Do you get it? So the man feel like there is someone at the national office who hates him or who wants his downfall. Now he didn't fall while winning elections, overwhelmingly. What will you do? And it's not like he doesn't know who is doing that. He knows the person, but for the sake of the party, not to mar anything, they didn't mention the person's name. So now when you the person who was trying to bring him down, who na there now obey. And I think the NDC executive, if they know anything about this, they should make sure they resolve it going forward next year for the national. Yes, sir. Or more can some JJ. But you are going to comment section. The ones who say they be amity.